Anyway, let's pivot now to our final review of the evening. It is going to be of Nightmare Alley, which is a 2021 American neo-noir psychological thriller film directed by Guillermo Del Toro from a screenplay by Del Toro and Kim Morgan, based on the 1946 novel of the same name by William Lindsay Gresham, being the second feature film adaptation of Gresham's novel following the 1947 version. A co-production between Searchlight Pictures, TSG Entertainment, and Double Dare You Productions, the film stars Bradley Cooper as a charming and ambitious carnival worker with a mysterious past who takes big risks to boost his career. Kate Blanchett, Toni Collette, William Dafoe, Richard Jenkins, Rooney Mara, Ron Perlman, Mary Steenburgen, and David Strathairn also star. Del Toro announced the film in 2017 and produced alongside J. Miles Dale and Cooper. Frequent collaborator Dan Laustsen was the cinematographer, and Nathan Johnson replaced Alexandra Desplat as its composer. Principal photography began in January 2020 in Toronto, Ontario, but was shut down in March 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Production resumed in September 2020 and concluded that December. Nightmare Alley premiered at Alice Tully Hall in New York City on December 1st of last year and was theatrically released in the US 16 days later, do you math, Shane? By Searchlight Pictures. Additionally, a black and white version titled Nightmare Alley Vision in Darkness and Light was released in select cities starting on January 14th of this year. The film received positive reviews from critics, but flopped at the box office, grossing a total of $38 million worldwide against a $60 million production budget. It received 4 nominations at the 94th Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Audiences seem to like this one, 7.1 from 98,000 users on IMDb. It has a fair Metascore of 70, and the Rotten Tomatoes, gents, what say you for Guillermo's latest?
68.
Low. I was thinking like 86, but Ben's made me rethink. Maybe 83?
80 flat, certified fresh.
Ooh.
4 out of 5.
I won.
Giving this the thumbs up. Nightmare Alley, gents. Guillermo Del Toro. The last we saw from him was The Shape of Water, I want to say in 2017 or so. And that too
I haven't seen that either.
Picture nominated, I want to say.
I believe it was nominated.
Sally Hawkins was definitely nominated for her performance in it, I do recall. And she might have even won it. Anyway, it's a few years ago now. I'm forgetful. But anyway, Mr. Movies, Best Picture nominated film, sir, Nightmare Alley. What do you think?
I saw this at the cinemas a number of weeks ago.
Okay.
And didn't write anything down because I'm usually writing notes when I watch, and I'm not going to take my phone out and write notes in a cinema, so I didn't. But let me see if I can recall my feels. I didn't like The Shape of Water almost at all. I thought I was just utterly confused as to not what was happening, but why I cared or anything. I don't know. It just didn't hit me. This one hit me a lot better. This one was fine. I think Del Toro seems to, from an amateur's point of view, he seems to like bend the rules of movie making. Like the first act in this movie feels like an hour and a half long. Yeah. It's a really long first act in the film.
I think it's a 2-act film, honestly.
Yeah. The last act is either 10 minutes or there isn't one. And yeah, it's not like you're not allowed to break the rules. It's just like the rules are there because probably 2 reasons. Like it's a circular relationship. Everybody's used to watching films with this pacing and this kind of ebb and flow. It's a real subconscious experience. Like people aren't sitting there going like, where's the act 2 turn? Where's the setup and the premise, all that kind of bullshit. Nobody's thinking about that stuff.
Similar to music. Like there's meant to be a release at the end of chordal progressions and things like that, and like a closing off of sorts, which is like movies that end with literal or figurative cliffhangers sometimes leave you feeling like on edge or dissatisfied or like what? And that kind of breaks that rule a little bit, but it's not the same. But
there's this album by King Giz that I'm loving.
Nonagon Infinity?
Every week. Sorry?
Nonagon
No. The latest one.
I haven't heard the latest one.
Butterfly 3000, and I have no idea why it's called that. But all of the songs have this great syncopation where there's something happening on a regular interval, but then something that's shifted and lengthened or shortened so that they don't overlap perfectly, and they start to, like, this little hook starts later in the next measure and then earlier and then later and so on. And sometimes it's subtle and sometimes it's not, but it's always on my mind now that I've felt it. And it was something that you feel where it's like you're not paying attention to it, it just happens. So that's kind of like what Nightmare Alley was doing to me. I was kind of like, I don't feel like this is a real classical movie attempt. It feels, like I said, like he's bending the rules or whatever. And I can't really go into more examples as to why, but it just feels like Del Toro's kind of just got his own thing going on. Like he's got his own track and he just follows that. And look, this movie, like I said, it hit me harder than The Shape of Water. And I think the reason for that is much more superficial. I love mentalism and like exploring the idea that our minds are far from perfect and can be easily tricked into thinking that something has very much happened where it very much hasn't. So the mentalism in this case is like inferring things about a person based on how they present themselves to the world, how they dress, how they look, how they talk, what they say when they do speak, and all that kind of stuff tells you more about them than just the content of their speech. And in this case, it's used to trick people into thinking that you're some sort of psychic medium or whatever. You can tell people things about themselves that no one should know, like you have no right in knowing. And so that's kind of like the thing that's explored very heavily, especially in Act 2 of this film, where the titular character, Terry, is a mildly successful, psychic medium or whatever, and he'll use various forms of trickery to tell a person like what they're thinking of, or why they're here, or how many brothers and sisters they have, or what is in their purse, all that kind of fun stuff without knowing seemingly any better. And I was all in with all of that stuff. Like I was like, this is fascinating. This is very close to, like, if you guys have watched Darren Brown, he's a UK mental magician kind of, he does the same sort of thing. And he does like these big experiments where how much influence can you exert on a person to make them do something they would never otherwise do, or to make them think something is the case where it's very much not, and behave in certain ways, or give them a certain skill. Like there was this one episode of this show he did where he taught someone how to absorb very quickly very vast amounts of information that stays in his short-term memory, so that he could become like a pub quiz champion or whatever. Like he would attend the final of this pub quiz where all these teams from around the suburbs that were winning their local suburbs pub quiz would come for the grand final, and then he was on a team of his own. And then it's just like, it can be questions about anything trivia based. It's just a complete trivia off, and he's getting everything because he's just gone to the library and he's read like 500 books in the 3 weeks coming up to this by just like doing this quick scanning of every page and focusing, and then doing a couple of like memory techniques to access that information and stuff like that. And he's just like, I have no idea what's happening. I just know the answers to all these questions. I have no idea. Like he'll say, what year did so-and-so win the race at Le Mans? And he would just be like, that was 1941. And he'd just like write it down. It's just like, I have no idea how I know that. And it's so fun to watch that kind of stuff.
That reminds me of the movie. Is it called Upgrade? Where he's fighting, but he doesn't like know how he's doing it. He's just panicking.
Upgrade is such a great movie. Everybody is hearing this.
I've been meaning to watch that. I saw a clip of that in a Reddit meme this week, and I'm like, what is that from? I want to see this. And yeah, Upgrade. I'll have to watch it.
Yeah, it's such a... I don't want to say anything else about Upgrade, but I was so excited when the movie started to happen with Upgrade. It's like, where is this going? Like, they're doing all this weird stuff, but it's not going anywhere yet. And then the type of movie just presents itself. It's like, we're going to do this, and we're starting right now. And it's like, oh my God, I love it. And
Nice.
Yeah, very, very cool movie. But anyway, the Nightmare Alley.
Just to sidetrack, that's like the opposite of Lucy, where it's just like, oh, you're doing this? This is cool. It's like, oh, no, you're doing this. Yes, instead. Oh, and that's 2/3 of the movie to go. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Anyway.
Oh, yeah, I love movies like this. Like Limitless is another movie like this.
I
It's
love
Yes.
Limitless.
Yes.
Yeah, Brad Cooper.
And yeah, exactly.
Mm.
And okay, so I was hook, line, and sinker by that point already. Then like the rest of the movie happens, like we're stuck with a less than fortunate protagonist, like someone who's not exactly the audience's chosen champion or whatever. You know,
he's not a hero.
He's not a hero. At the start of the movie, there's this like he's just dragging this corpse through a house and like putting it under the floorboards, and then he's walking away from the house on fire, and you're like, what, did he kill that person? What is happening? And then we'll eventually learn about what it was that happened. Or was he just like you know, the death was completely accidental, and then he's just cutting ties and going on the run, or not on the run, but you know, just he's got nothing, so he may as well just
leaving it behind.
Yeah, start a new life. And so that's where we start with the film is Bradley Cooper is starting a new life. He's just jumps on a bus and sees where it takes him. And the first thing I hollered and laughed about was, it's like, this is when was this made? It was like,
it released 2020.
No, sorry, when was it set? It was like 40s or something.
40s,
no, 1925.
25?
Oh, hang on, no,
You're thinking of the
it was right before the start of the First World War. Right before the start of the First World War. So it'd be mid to late 30s.
You mean the Second World War?
Second World War. Yeah, mid to late 30s.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, before
Right.
the
Because
Second World War.
there are notes.
And
There are notes of Poland being invaded.
Oh, yes.
41,
There's
and
the radio.
that's
yeah.
before the 2-year jump, so 39 probably, roughly.
so
Yeah.
we're in this world where things are hard to come by. You know, there's not a lot of wealth to be had. He's a bit of a hobo drifter kind of type, and he just walks into this random carnival and finds his way into a place in like a restricted area. He's not supposed to be in he's behind the tents or whatever, behind the scenes. And the first thing that happens is he's not saying anything. Like, he hasn't said anything in this movie yet. It's like we're like 15 minutes in, and what's his name? Willem Dafoe, who's I guess like one of the owners, operators
It's one of the head carnies, yeah.
one of the carny folk. He's like, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. Get out of here!" And he kind of just doesn't say anything. He just turns around, and starts walking away. He's like, "All right, I think I got a job for you if you want a job." And then he just starts working. And then again, like the job is over, and he's like, "All right, time to go." And he just doesn't say a thing. And he's like, "Well, all right, I can give you a place to sleep, but just this once." It's like he's just like succeeding, like he's just falling into success by not doing anything. It was just like a really funny character trait of Dafoe. Like,
I thought we were in for a silent protagonist the whole film by this point.
Right?
I'm thinking
like GTA 3.
This feels like a video game. This feels like you're just like navigating a world and talking to NPCs, and they're shuffling you down the linear path.
I thought that was hilarious. Like, he's just standing there saying nothing. He's just moping around or whatever, and he's just like, "All right, we'll give you a job, and I'll pay you well. All right, fine, I'll double it." You know, it's like
you drive a hard bargain. Yeah,
he's not even arguing, and he's losing every argument. Yeah. So anyway, it's got this real dark side to it. This movie it's got this real dark side to it, where there's like, what kind of a person are we dealing with? We don't know, because he doesn't say anything to anybody almost all the time, unless he wants something and he goes out and finds a way to get it by influencing someone or just becoming friends with them because he wants to learn more about something from them or whatever. So like, there's good reasons for the things that he's doing, but there's also bad reasons for the things that he's doing. So it's all left morally ambiguous until you finally learn what kind of person this is and what he did and how he got here and all that kind of stuff. And I don't want to spoil too much, but just talking about that fact kind of spoiled a lot of it, I'm afraid. I'm very sorry. So the first act is like an hour and a half, and that's him being a carny and learning the ropes and trying to improve himself in that world and trying to become a name and get his own act together. And like, literally, like, you know, you're a carny, you have to have an act to people or to entertain them or something. And so he's trying to scrounge together some sort of act. And then the second act is he's learned all his skills, and he burns his bridges with the Carney folk, and he goes to the big city or whatever to try and become somebody. And we've missed like 2 years or 3 years or something
years.
in the interim, and he's made it. Like, he's done it. I want to see
that 2 years.
The movie in between. Like, I wanted to see the first act be like half an hour shorter.
You just want to see more of the mentalism, Ben.
I do. I want to see him struggling and learning and getting his first big break, and then building a momentum and learning the tricks and of the trade and the literal tricks of how you do the mentalism stuff. I want to see all that stuff in greater detail, but instead we just head to a pivotal point in his career where he gets confronted with the thing that he's been constantly warned about. Don't go past the trick where you just show off a funny skill and then say goodnight to everybody and leave. Don't try and convince them that it's really magic, like that it's really happening.
Yeah, that it's really happening. He was warned against doing spook shows. What was that guy? Is it Dan Edwards, the biggest douche in the galaxy or something? South Park did a bit on him because he was the guy that had a TV show about talking to the dead, and he was basically a cold read guy. I can't remember. Was it Dan Edwards?
It sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Edwards but South Park had a phenomenally funny episode where they basically say he's the biggest douche, and then he doesn't even enter into the galaxy's biggest douche contest, and and he wins, and he's just constantly saying, "I'm not a douche," but he's just a massive douche.
Total douche,
because
he's doing that shit. Like, he's giving people this unwarranted sense of hope. Like, it's just like it's pathetic and cruel, and he's making these people. He thinks he's making these people happy, like telling them what they want to hear, kind of deal. Like, oh, giving you tell my son I love him and I miss him so much, and he says he misses you too. All that fucking bullshit. And like, it's still like it happens like today, like that fucking Edwards guy. Guys like him still do this shit. They put on the spook show, I guess is what you say, Terry. Anyway, that's the movie. Let me just say, I enjoyed it more than Caitlin did, and more than I've heard other people enjoying it. Like, it did have this really dark
John Edwards.
Core. John Edwards, yeah. That sounds more. Edwards was definitely correct. And look, we're saved here. I'm saved here because it's not a protagonist that I'm putting myself in his shoes. I'm not. He feels something, I don't. I'm just watching his life happen or whatever. So with respect to the farewell, I'm putting myself in Awkwafina's shoes, and I'm like, how could you do that to your grandmother? I could never do that to my grandmother. I'm empathizing heavily. But in the Nightmare Alley, I managed to separate myself enough, but not too much, that it wasn't enjoyable anymore. Like, I wasn't bored. I was still thoroughly entertained, and I wasn't along for this dark ride inside. I was just watching it happen and appreciating it for what it was just on the screen. I wasn't there as well, which may be a point against the movie. Like, I'm supposed to be there, right? It's supposed to be a roller coaster ride, and I'm supposed to be in the roller coaster with the protagonist and going through what he's going through and all that kind of fun stuff. But to be perfectly honest, I would argue I don't think that Del Toro wants us to do that necessarily.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think that we're meant to necessarily put ourselves in this character's shoes.
Why don't you keep rolling with it, Terry? Take it away from me for a sec.
Sure. I don't think that we're meant to necessarily sympathize or empathize with this particular character's plight. I think that Del Toro has like an interesting story to tell. This is almost, to me, this movie is kind of like one of the episodes of oh gosh, it was on maybe ABC Kids. It's like, this is a true story, happened to a friend of mine, and it's like these short horror stories, but this is like not a short horror story, but it's that type of kind of thing. You're along for the ride. This is like a campfire horror story kind of thing in long form. It's like a prolonged campfire psychological thriller horror story. That type of thing. And so Buddy, this was a good point and big thing noir relies on in general with their characters, for sure. I think Brad Cooper's character, for me, is way easier to read, which is ironic because he's so good at reading other people. I found a lot of elements of this movie to be predictable, and I kind of feel like I don't know, maybe I'm just this is a joke, built different. I immediately drew very heavy conclusions from the opening sequence of this film. The dragging the corpse into the thing and setting it on fire, like the way that it was wrapped up in trust and things like that. I was reading into that quite heavily, about what the fiber of this character is, and like he's on a Greyhound bus, and with no destination. Like he only gets off the bus because it's at the end of the line, and the bus driver literally says end of the line, everybody has to get off. And he is a little bit listless, but he's like, well, this is a small person and I kind of follow it. He's kind of fascinated with this show, even though he knows he can't afford to participate. He decides to participate, and then to escape from the consequences of that, he does what he did just 5 minutes earlier, and he kind of tries to escape the scene. And you're right, he certainly does luck into a lot of circumstances, but the characters, I don't know, maybe but as soon as Willem Dafoe says like, this is what alcohol, it's for the preserving of this, don't drink it because it's literally poison, this is the stuff that you can drink, he's like, oh, I don't touch the stuff. I'm like, okay, so that's going to be the undoing of that character who we've established has a drinking habit. And also, like, I'm just drawing these conclusions, and I'm like, and he's going to make him drink it because he's the kind of person that would do that, because he either directly or indirectly killed the person that we were introduced to at the start. I immediately came to that conclusion, at multiple points throughout the film, but I was still very much along for the ride. I was very interested in seeing how dark or to what lengths this character would go to achieve what it was that he wanted, and it was very difficult to decode exactly what it was that he wanted. I think he definitely had a or like he was riding some type of high over controlling people. So I think maybe it's like a power thing, but I'm not 100% sure if it's a strictly speaking a power thing. But I do kind of think that it was. There's no denying that the character's talented. You see some of the sketches that he's drawn, and you know, I want to believe that one of the few honest lines that the character has is where he says that, you know, when I was a kid, you know, my mum entered me into lots of competitions and I always won, but you know, I never went anywhere with it, because like these are some A grade quality, like hyper realism pencil drawings that he's kind of done. And he obviously has a very creative brain, because he comes up with this change to an act that's actually really compelling. The act was already kind of compelling because it was using oh god, what are those things called? The metal orb things that have electricity. Those electric things. We had them in high school, and you'd like someone would touch it, and then like you'd have a chain of people. Sort of. Yeah, it's like a Tesla coil, maybe, but I had a particular name. She was holding on to two of them, and she was like, only mildly actually getting electrocuted and stuff like that. And he's just like, well, let's change the show to something that's a little bit more gritty and dangerous appearing. It's no more dangerous than what we're already doing. The visual format is just changing. And so it speaks to a really cool creativity, but also a really dark sense of creativity. Because it's a grim circumstance, the electric chair that he kind of designs and builds. Very little care for consequence. I think that he doesn't really give a crap about the consequences of things. I don't know whether that's I can't remember the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath, but I don't think that he's incapable of having meaningful relationships, but he definitely does not care about, you know, the consequences of things, because he just does things that have really bad consequences if he was to be caught. I just don't think he kind of gives a rip about it. There's no line that this character won't cross. There's no relationship that he won't betray for the sake of getting what it is that he wants. And I don't even necessarily know if it was about the money. I think the money was like a means to an end, but I think that he was more interested in the power. Yeah, the movie was dark. I couldn't pay full attention to this in one sitting. I think I watched this over the course of maybe half of the day, because it was a very long first act and I wasn't feeling the best yesterday when I watched it. And because it's kind of touching on some pretty dark and grim things, I'm like, I'm going to do some other stuff with my day and kind of come back to this and then resume it. But yeah, so I can't actually remember exactly how long the movie went for, but I remember feeling like it went for a very long time.
Yeah, 2.5 hours, this one.
Yeah. Couldn't really sit still for the entirety of it. I don't know if I have any other thoughts that aren't necessarily spoiler related.
We can do spoilers after if you want.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the interactions that he had with certain characters and the contrast of what he idealizes and rationalizes his position through. So he says, he's like, why wouldn't we do this? People want closure. We're doing the right thing. But he doesn't really care about that. He just cares about being the person that's the focal point of this interplay between
and the
people.
money. He's like, they're going to pay me a ton of money to
there is
do this in a private session.
Yeah. And so the contrast of what he thinks he's doing to the reality. I love that little interlude that they pivot to partway through the second act, where things are certainly going tits up. And I'm like, this is what he thought he was doing, and this is what's actually happened, and he is the direct cause of that event. And it's super dark and brutal. So I did enjoy that from a cinematic standpoint, the contrast of his ideal to what was actually happening. And it made me think of a quote. I don't remember where I first heard this, but the road to hell being paved with good intentions. I don't actually think that this gentleman had good intentions. I think that he was rationalizing his actions with the veneer of good intentions, and definitely brought hell to a lot of circumstances. That's my thoughts.
Nice. I'm
maybe
sure.
The road to hell with good intentions is all the other characters helping this man.
Yeah,
good
giving
intentions.
him access to stuff, taught him how to literally manipulate people into believing things. Yeah.
I'm not sure where to start with this one, but I will say that Guillermo Del Toro as a filmmaker might be like one of the most fascinating, writer directors working today. I wasn't familiar with his work. I watched Pan's Labyrinth when I was younger. And then I think that was the only film of his I saw until Pacific Rim. I love Pacific Rim. Enjoyed The Shape of Water.
Different though.
Yeah, haven't seen the Hellboy films and haven't seen either of the Blade films. He did Blade 2. But honestly, one of the things of his that has always stood out to me, and it's something that I wish I revisited, because a lot of what he talks about, what I'm referring to is an interview that he did with Ken Levine, the creative director of BioShock, years ago, on a podcast series that no longer exists. I hope I have the VOD somewhere that I can listen back to it one day. But he talks about his fascination with monsters and darkness, and also the fact that every story in human history has been told, and so the only new stories you can tell are through a different lens or through a different context. So you can take the story of Romeo and Juliet and tell it in space, or you can take the story of Dracula and do it in the prehistoric era. No, like the actual text itself is identical, but the context needs to change for it to become new again. So while you were talking about it, I was just quickly looking up to try and see if I could find some of these amazing quotes of his. I typed in Guillermo Del Toro quotes, and this brainy quote site just delivered a ton that I think helps illustrate the type of thinking that goes through this man's head. The first one that pops up is, these are all Guillermo quotes. Monsters are the patron saints of imperfection. And the other one that jumps out to me here says, I'm not that interested in recreating reality. I'm interested in recreating an emotional truth. So this is a man who takes reality or emotion and likes to offer a new twist on it. And I think that he does it fantastically in this film. And I love the exploration. This film reminded me of a Scorsese film. and it certainly felt like a book where the character we see in the first 10 minutes is very different to the character we see in the last 10 minutes. And in the same way that, you know, the Irishman does that, or Goodfellas, we really see a dramatic evolution in the character of Stanton Carlyle here, played by Bradley Cooper. And I love the journey that we go on and how that's explored. For me, like, the one thing I came away thinking about this film, and it's kind of alluded to, well, in the first scene, but also in the very early half of the first act, and that is sin, and what it means to sin, and how sins have an impact on your life and the life around you, and where a path of sin can take you. And I think the film, and we can touch on this when we talk about spoilers potentially, is how it tries to play with your expectations and in your perception of this character, in the sense that a lot of the first half of this film, in the first act, is feeding you bits that make you want to start to root for this character. He's someone who's beginning to, you know, gain the skills that these Carney folks have, and is beginning to find himself. That's, you know, I think that's a sort of a character path that we can easily attach ourselves to. There's also the, you know, wanting to save the damsel in distress and, you know, take her away from the harshness of the life that she's living. So I think there's like really classic cinematic storytelling tropes that we can really latch onto, that I think do well to, I suppose, distract you from that first image that we saw at the very start of the film as well, and makes you question, okay, what is the true nature of this character, and what type of person are they? So for me, that really boils down to, the path of sin and where it can take you, and the darkness it can create around this character, and what it can, I suppose, the end result can be when taken to its extreme, which is where Stanton Carlyle's character really takes us. So I really enjoy this film. I love that it's otherworldly, and even though it's set in reality, it doesn't really feel like it. It kind of reminds me of Pan's Labyrinth in that way, and I love the way that Guillermo explores this. Like, I see him as a unique filmmaker in the same way that I see Woody Allen. I don't think there are many others of note that are doing I suppose, delivering films or cinematic experiences like these ones. So in that sense, I'm incredibly thankful that he's around, and he's getting funding, because it seems like outside of Pacific Rim, his movies don't do that well, at least commercially. So I'm just incredibly thankful that this one has been brought to life. I really enjoyed it. I think the structure is its biggest weakness. I think the pacing of this film really hurts it, and I can understand why some people might come away thinking, wow, this was a real drag. It's a roller coaster that felt like it was broken, in the sense that it's just like, what, like, you just imagine being on the ride and just being jostled around a ton and unevenly, and nothing's really truly riveting until the end, and you're like, what was I supposed to feel across that whole thing? But when I pick it apart and think about what the film does from moment to moment, I really enjoy this one, and I think I'm going to enjoy it with more rewatches, as you start to pick up the pieces, like, oh, that's what this moment's all about. This is where this particular plot twist or turn is meant to take the character, and what meaning we're meant to infer from that. So in that sense, I can compare it a bit more to something like The Power of the Dog last week, but I just don't think there was a lot of character growth or development there. That one was just soaked in metaphor and was so dense that wasn't really enough to latch onto, and it didn't have much, I suppose, in the context going for it, where this one really did. This fantastical world, otherworldly, like I said. I really love this film. Highly recommend.
I really liked the performance of, I just looked up his name, Holt McCallany. He's in the sequel to Jack Reacher is where I first saw him. He plays the guy who becomes the major.
What's the character? What's the actor's name?
Holt
McCallany.
McCallany. He plays the head security for
the head security. I thought so. Yeah, I like him a lot too. Yeah,
he's the type of man as well.
He's the type of actor that when the second I saw him on screen, I'm like, you are the muscle, but you're also the brains. Like, he just he has that feel.
He's
to
perfect.
He exudes
right hand man.
Yeah, definitely. And also perfect for monster films.
He's protecting as well.
Yeah.
And Richard Jenkins, the guy, the guy who was protecting what? Was his
Again,
name?
I need to say
Is the voice of Richard Jenkins
right.
in Spotlight? Is he the voice of Snipes?
I think you might be right.
The speech?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
because
think-
I'm like,
I'm not
it's
sure
a
if he's
very distinct
credited.
voice.
Yeah.
Right.
But again, I'm just going to reiterate what I said in our Blade Runner review. I only knew Bradley Cooper, and I think maybe Tony Collette. I think I saw on a poster. I didn't know anyone else. The joy when you get to like the last third of this film and Richard Jenkins appears on screen is like one of my favorite character actors. I was thrilled, guys. Foiled, they're spoiled. I don't want to know about the actors in films, okay? When Kate Blanchett appeared, I'm like, yes, let's go. I was so pumped. Oh, love it. Willem Dafoe, he's like, you see him on stage from a distance. I'm like, I know the shape of that face. That's a Willem Dafoe shaped face right there. I'm pumped. Absolutely pumped. Yeah,
and Ron Perlman.
Ron Perlman.
Yeah, Ron.
Unmistakable.
I didn't mean to undermine you because you were on a good flow. Ron Perlman's the one that says, "Hey, you're not supposed to be here. Well, you needed a couple extra hands, so stick around. You might get $1." Like, yeah.
And Noah Vosen from the Bourne.
Yeah, Noah Vosa.
Oh yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
He's another one with those voices. You know, the guy.
Yeah.
You can tell that he got his foot in the door because of his unique way of speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Before we dive into spoilers, boys, let's do verdicts. I want to hear it. Let's go to the Dulcet Tones of Terry Fear.
This to me is the definition of a don't rush. Because, or maybe it's good, but it's not for everyone. Yeah, well made. I think well shot. Yeah, don't rush.
Yeah, beautiful film. Yeah. Ben.
It's got this very unique palette to it. Like, I could see any frame of it and go, "Oh, that's Nightmare Alley for sure." Like, just the artistic style, the colorization that they put on the film after the fact in post production, and the like, it puts it in a timeless capsule.
$60 million budget. That's tiny.
Tiny.
It is.
It's
Yeah.
what he gets out of that, amazing. Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think it's a don't rush also.
Two don't rushes or
watchability. I don't know if I can.
Yeah, I
like knowing how it ends and knowing what I'm in for.
really?
You know?
Okay.
Like where I'm going at the end.
I'm watching it for those
know.
performances, man. That was so all of them were so good. Yeah, don't miss it for me. I love this film. Yeah, I think it's unlike anything you'll see unless you've seen Guillermo's previous work, because he just has that. It's what he's got that unique stamp that he's bringing to the world of cinema that we all know and love, and I love that.
I will say it's
exist.
probably Bradley Cooper's best performance that I've seen.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's a big call, Ben.
Yeah, I really liked. He was perfectly cast, and he did a great job.
He's unrecognizable to me in the last 10 minutes. I thought they swapped the actors.
Yeah, he looked very Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, don't miss it, don't rush, and don't rush. Let's dive into spoilers, gents. If there's anything you want to touch on, can I quickly say the bathtub scene? For me, that was like a weird thing where I'm like, what is this meant to be saying? I draw it back to the point that I made earlier, where maybe it's sort of tied in where like it's another this character's innocence being taken away, like with force potentially, or he's just like falling deeper into this world that he doesn't know what's in store for him yet. I don't know. I just didn't know what to pull away with from that, and maybe it's just setting up a tenuous romantic connection between him and Xena. I wasn't sure.
You're the only one who didn't know what to pull away with.
Hey!
Hey! There's a thought that I forgot to share, which is the fun house where the geek is found. There's a list of the deadly sins, and because a through line of the movie is sin, and like absolution from grief, from guilt, from like these broken relationships, like unresolved things. I kind of feel like because Tony Collette's character at that point says you're a maybe, and maybes are dangerous for me, and I kind of feel like he's allowing her to indulge in the sin of lust, um, uh, because he's like he recognizes that she's with this person because like he was literally just there, and there's obviously a relationship between these two people because they live within this home together. um but he kind of allows it to happen. There's like this descent into various forms of depravity that the character indulges in or leads others into or encourages others into,
Mm.
as well. It's not as like I'm not saying that every mortal sin or the seven deadly sins are all present throughout the film, but there's yeah, I kind of feel like that scene is another example or like just a little subtle signpost to the moral character, or the moral fabric of this character, which is to
Mm.
say that there's not a lot of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, the yeah, what was the thing that I was? The Kate Blanchett in this is interesting. I was kind of struggling to understand her motivations for what she did.
Yeah,
Um,
she had a weird,
but
an interesting start to her arc, and she's playing this
yeah,
very intricate character that then the complexity of her character kind of just gets ruined by when she reveals like her motivation for doing this in the first place. Like, you embarrass me in
yeah,
front of strangers, how dare you? I'm gonna ruin your life over the next 6 months. Like
yeah,
that whole culmination of her arc felt cheap.
yeah.
I don't know. I felt loved it.
Yeah, me either. And also, I don't. I always, not always. I've within the last handful of years become really critical of cinematic portrayals of psychology, um, because I feel like there's a lot of stigma in the public around mental health issues and mental health professionals, and I kind of feel like psychologists in film and TV kind of get a bit of a bad rep, or a bad rap. I'm not sure. They're not represented well, and people with mental illnesses aren't often portrayed super well, and it just kind of reinforces these stigmas. Like it's super common for people to say things along the lines of, "Oh, I'm just a little bit OCD about this particular thing," and it's like, well, no. Like OCD, that's a clinical diagnosis. You can't be a bit of it or not.
Mm.
Like you either have OCD or you don't, and if you like, everybody has things that they might obsess over or be particular about, but that doesn't reach the level of that clinical diagnosis, and it can be incredibly debilitating for people. And film and TV reinforces that particular thing on a fairly regular basis. And I feel like this film doesn't do a great job of painting psychologists well, but it is set in the late 30s, early 40s, and so it like psychology's come a long way since then, because I kind of feel like she challenges these people based on the fact that she is a clinician and they're trying to do some semblance of what it is that maybe she thinks that she does. Like they're trying to trick people in, because they have a rudimentary understanding of their psyche, and that's proven right ultimately, because she plays him basically like a fiddle. Like she's the one that sets up this stuff, and I think that it probably is petty, but she's damaged as well. She's been broken by circumstances, and the vulnerability that she shares is all as a part of the manipulation for Brad Cooper's character. I do find it interesting that he thought he was getting something over on her, which speaks to his superiority or inferiority complex. I'm not sure. I think he had a god complex. I think this character thought that he was the smartest guy in the room everywhere that he went, because of this understanding that he kind of has about people, and he got absolutely played by her, and it turned him into it turned him bodily into the wretch that he was morally, which is why he was so wrapped in playing the geek, because he's like, I recognize that I actually am the wretch in this situation. So yeah, I liked the interplay between those two characters. I don't necessarily think that it's cheap, because like he literally killed that Noah Vosa actor guy, so that he could steal the trick, and take over the show, completely, and then move on. It's just, yeah. So I'm kind of glad that happened to him.
How good was all the practical effects? My goodness, the blood and the gore was so on point.
Well, I think that was the only visual effect, wasn't it? The destroyed face at the end. I thought that was a visual effect. I didn't think that was practical.
Which destroyed face?
The one he ran over, or the one that he
but also the one that he beat, the one that he beats the nose off of.
Right.
But his ear. Do you mean that sort of stuff? The practical effects are.
I meant all three that we just mentioned. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think that stuff that happened to those dudes were practical effects. They might have been. I suppose it makes sense for the budget.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think they were.
Yeah. Oh, I'll have to I don't want to rewatch it. I'll go back and rewatch those scenes. But I thought that the stuff that they did with the nose, I'm like, that doesn't look great. But maybe I wasn't paying attention. I don't know. Yeah, I'll rewatch those specific scenes.
Yeah. Enjoy that.
And revise. Yeah, and revise.
I feel like there was another spoilery thing that I wanted to say, but now I've forgotten. Ben, anything from you before we wrap?
I just really, again, loved the mentalism stuff. I watched the Randy, what's his name? James Randi? He has a documentary about his life and career.
Mm-hmm.
He's a debunker of these mediums and
right.
Yeah. I've seen this guy before.
He famously detected this preacher who would take like wishes from the audience. They would come and like write their name and whatever their wish is. I'm desperately broke and I need money, please help, or whatever, and put it in there. And then his wife would take the ball of wishes and just like pull them out one by one and then find ones that are interesting and then over like a radio signal feed into his ear all the info that he needed. So he's just standing there on stage. I'm like, I'm feeling, is there a Lucy Butler over here? Oh, hi Lucy. Yeah, I'm getting these energies that say you've got a bad hip, and is that true? Oh, amazing. Can't believe you knew it, even though I wrote it down on a piece of paper. That could be anywhere now. 20 minutes ago. And so anyway, he bugged the theater, like they just put a radio scanner there, and they piggybacked on the signal, and they just recorded the back and forth, like not the back and forth, just the forth from the wife to the
beautiful.
So terrible. And then he gets called out for that, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry or whatever, and he's doing the shit again, like in like 3 years time he's back at it, like doing the whole healing thing. Anyway, love the James Randi thing, how he's got this organization that's like, if you can like prove within a agreed upon scientific setting that you can do any supernatural power, we'll pay you $10 million, and no one's ever been able to come even close to claiming that. Love
there's
that
some
whole
really funny ones. There's some super funny ones in YouTube of like psychic dudes and telekinetic dudes and things like that. They're a little they're almost like that secondhand embarrassment that you talk. It's like you're embarrassed on behalf of the dudes that are trying to do the things. Like, oh buddy, this is embarrassing for you.
He did this joint like study on telekinesis, like with a couple of universities that were like, can you recommend things that we need to look for to try and test this kind of stuff? We're trying to find out if it's a actual phenomenon that people that claim it have. And not only did he like give them a few things to look out for, he found some magicians and paid them to go and become like to get into these studies and get around the things that they were going to ask, just to show how even people that are looking very intently at what you're doing can be confused and tricked. And they confused and tricked these idiots. And they're like I have no idea how they're doing some of the things, but they're told like move the matchstick with your mind kind of thing. It's on the table. You can't bring anything to the table and find a way to move it or whatever. And they sit there for hours, figuring a way out of either not performing the trick and coming up with an excuse or doing it somehow. And one of them figured out how to do it. And then they had like a lunch break, and he goes over to the other magician and he's like, "This is how you do it." He tells him what to do, and then after the lunch break, now the other guy can do it as well. It's like, oh my god, we got like two telekinetic individuals here. This is amazing. That kind of deal. I love that stuff. That was in the documentary as well.
Anyway, that is Nightmare Alley, Best Picture nominated film. And also the other 3 nominations, I think, very well deserved. Achievement in production design, costume design, cinematography. Beautiful film. And well crafted indeed. So it is on Disney Plus if you'd like to check it out for yourself.